ter Weeme.
Jim Allen, how are you?
Right, I'm good. How are you?
I'm excellent.
Right away, I think you've broken 2 records by being here on the program. He who has traveled the longest from Kamloops, BC.
Here we go.
Okay, maybe not directly, but I'm still going to take the win. And the person with the longest current job title.
Yeah.
Chief Social Purpose Officer and Vice President Player Experience for the BCLC, British Columbia Lottery Corporation. But I didn't have you pegged as a big gambler. This is gambling new to your life, is it?
It is. I work for a gambling corporation, but that doesn't necessarily... Interestingly enough, we have a lot of people that are not gamblers that work for the company, but they really like the fact that we are the largest non-tax source of revenue to the province, and that that money goes into healthcare and education and arts and culture. And so that's what motivates a lot of people.
So, and Kamloops, I love it out there.
Yeah.
We were just talking before we started because I ski, and I was out at Sun Peaks, which is, you got to go through Kamloops to get there.
Yep.
Now, I always say I love it out there. Kelowna, Coldstream, Lake Country. I always say that I'd move out there in a heartbeat if I won the lottery. And then I thought, wait a second, I know someone that works for a lottery. Maybe I'll talk to. Okay.
Boom.
So I know you're all ethical and stuff. So that was a test. So did you create the social purpose position, or did they recruit you? Did you see an ad and did you?
It came about
apply?
as follows. The board of directors, there was a new board of directors that was brought in about 4 years ago. And as part of, they engaged in a strategic planning exercise together with the executive, and it was brought forward that BCLC should transition into a social purpose company, and they needed somebody to do that work. And so they took what was formerly the VP of Communications and CSR, or Corporate Social Responsibility job, which existed. That person had left, and they recast it as the VP of Social Purpose and Stakeholder Engagement. However, about 5 months after I started in that role, we went through a reorg, and I got a bunch of new responsibilities, and my title changed to Chief Social Purpose Officer and VP Player Experience.
After you started.
Yeah.
So this is from I've done some research now, Peter.
Uh-oh.
So from the
scary.
announcement, quote, Peter's professional experience spans the world of corporate, government, and nonprofit clients in North America, Europe, and Asia. He's lived and worked in Canada, the Netherlands, and India, where he has advised companies and organizations on a range of values-based issues. He has also developed various campaigns and initiatives focused around issues such as climate action, conservation, public health, and diversity and inclusion. I'm out of breath. That sounds so impressive. Now, you strike me as a guy who just kind of is not afraid of just pulling up stakes and just kind of going for it.
I've done that.
And your whole career has been evidence of that. So way back when you worked, I think, Communicate, right?
Yep.
We weren't there together, but McGrath and Associates, which I sort of knew you a little bit. I met you maybe. These don't even appear on your longish resume anymore. About that time, you decided to leave it all behind and go get your MBA in the Netherlands. So why did you do that?
Well, I'm kind of unique in that I have a master's degree, but I don't have a bachelor's degree.
Oh, did you graduate high school?
Yes, I did.
Are we breaking news today?
No, I did. And I became what's called a certified advertising agency practitioner, which just gave me a designation to work in the marketing field.
So like a diploma or something?
Yeah, it was through the Institute of
college?
Canadian Advertisers. Now it's called the Institute of Canadian Agencies. At the time, it was called the Institute of Canadian Advertisers, I think. And then that together with my graduate school admission and my work experience, some of which you've referenced earlier, I was given placement into the program. Yeah, I went to the Netherlands. Why did I do that? Because I wanted European exposure and experience, and I wanted some kind of credentials. I had been working, in other roles, and I just decided it was time to get something on my resume that showed that I had some sort of credibility beyond just my work experience, and that's why I did an MBA. But I did a different kind of MBA. It was an MBA that specialized in environmental management. And that was pretty rare 30 years
back
ago.
then? Was it worth it for you?
100%.
Did it change your life? Did it?
Absolutely. Because first of all, it gave me a credential that I didn't have. It exposed me to a well-rounded business education, whether it was, production management, finance, mergers and acquisition, finance, HR, whatever. It just gave me a grounding in a bunch of different dimensions. And then that environmental management piece, I felt that was not too long after the Rio conference on the environment that took place in the late 80s, when the term sustainable development actually kind of entered the lexicon. And right. I saw that there might be an opportunity to work at that intersection of business and environmental issues and social issues. And I think it was a bit ahead of my time, to be honest. It is now, there isn't a business on the planet that can't be thinking of these things, or they get canceled to a certain degree. Right. And so, I was early, and many of my business school peers, they wanted to be brand managers or work for a consulting firm or whatever. And they thought I was crazy to specialize in environmental management. I quote, "That's a career limiting move." Yeah. Well, guess what? Not so much.
I thought you'd be a really interesting person to interview, because you've done so many different things. And then at a certain point, you went to India. So why did you go to India in the first place?
Well, gosh, there's a long answer to that. I'll try and keep it short. But
the last time I saw you, it was several years ago, but you were just visiting. But you were living in Mumbai, India at the time for at least
Delhi,
5 years, right?
Delhi.
5 years?
Yeah, from 2011 to 2016. Yep, it was a very contact sport, different reality than living in North America, for sure. Why do we end up there? The shortest story I can tell you is because India in 2010 brought in a law that required companies to spend, of a certain size and profitability, to spend a rolling 3-year average of their profit, 2%, of a rolling 3-year average of their profits on corporate social responsibility initiatives. Now, to be honest, which sounds very progressive, part of it is because of the government's failure to meet basic human needs. So it wasn't exactly a tax. It was a very cleverly designed law. And what they did was they didn't require companies to actually do the work. They required companies to report on whether or not they had done that work and whether they had made those investments. Right. And so there was a number of different NGOs and watchdogs, as it were, that would do annual lists of did companies follow through, or who did the best job, and that sort of thing. So that's when the law came in about 12 years ago. And then I have a lot of experience in that corporate social responsibility world. After I finished my MBA, I went back to my communication roots. I used to be the chief communications and marketing officer for Mountain Equipment Co-op, now Mountain Equipment Company, for example. And then I went back into consulting world, and always working at that intersection of business and sustainability. And I used to be the chair of Canadian Business for Social Responsibility. So when this law came forward in India, we had an agency in Vancouver. We just thought, well, this would be kind of interesting to go to India for a while. And, there is no shortage of both opportunities and issues to address around corporate social responsibility in India. So we thought it was fertile ground. And conscious of not trying to be having that colonial mentality, like, oh, we're the white Western guys and we know better. Right. But it certainly, we brought some skill sets and other relationships and things to the party, as it were, and ended up, working with some of the largest Indian corporations on their corporate social responsibility initiatives. And then there was a number of NGOs, because there was suddenly this flood of money. NGOs were also jockeying for position, like, how can we be a partner with these corporations on implementing various things, whether it was, hunger or health issues or environmental issues or whatever. Right. So we worked with a lot of NGOs to kind of professionalize them and position them to be a partner with many of these corporations. And
so that sounds like the wild, wild Far East, or how would you describe it then? So presumably business is done a little differently over there.
Yeah, as I said earlier, life in India and many Indian people, like, they go, wow, man, respect that you put up with 5 years there, or that you live 5 years there, because right. It's a totally different reality. Like, you're never alone. There's always stuff going on. It heaves. The country heaves, quite frankly, with people, and it's growing and developing very, very quickly. So there's lots of opportunity there. There's also lots of issues there. There's still the caste system, which although it's theoretically outlawed according to the constitution that was created when India got its independence, it's still very much a cultural practice. And so, 40% of Indian women are anemic, and 40% of children have stunting and rickets and other issues because they don't have enough nutrition. And there's just no end of, pollution. And, every year starting around the fall, you'll read in the newspaper about the air quality in Delhi because it's wintertime, there's inversions, it's hard up against the Himalayas. And it's a very challenging place to live, and people's lives, quite frankly, every day are compromised. And now you add to that the climate crisis, and if any of your viewers are following that, this year temperatures were regularly 48, 49, 50 degrees Celsius, right? So India is really ground zero for a lot of major challenges. And then, so there was no shortage of things to do. I also became very involved became the chair of the Indo-Canadian Business Chamber of Commerce in the Delhi NCR region. NCR means National Capital Region. I was very involved in the Dutch business community as well as the British business community. So, I had my tentacles into all kinds of things, and a lot of really significant, powerful Indians also interacted with those groups. So I had an amazing experience, I have to say.
So when I talked to you in person in the middle of that, I mean, it seemed like you were there for indefinitely or the long haul. I guess the obvious question is, why did you? Well, suddenly I noticed on LinkedIn that you'd moved back to Vancouver Island of all places. A little different.
That was like a 180. No question about it.
So why'd you leave?
We said at the beginning we'd give it 5 years. Right. It was a 5-year project. I have lived a lot of my life in 5-year increments. Okay. Right? 5 years is long enough that you can set some goals. It's short enough that you're not overly committing to something. So it was a 5-year plan. We stayed for 5 years, but during that 5-year time frame, the pollution in Delhi became really untenable. Like you couldn't see 100 meters down the street some days. Right. And we have a child who at the time was, I think, ranging between 9 and 14 years old. And the New York Times, there was a reporter there who wrote a very famous article because he was leaving. His child's lungs were collapsing from living in Delhi, and it was like, we can't ignore anymore. Although we're very committed to the work, we can't ignore the health issues. And I know it's kind of white privilege just to flee because many millions of people don't have that choice. But we were there voluntarily, and after 5 years, we just said, enough is enough.
So part of it's 5-year plan, part of it is personal decision to get out.
Absolutely.
So did you have something lined up when you just left it all again, or?
Yeah, we kind of left it, and then we wanted to decompress for a while. So we actually moved to an island off of Nanaimo called Gabriel Island. It's a small artsy island, and it was more. We bought an acreage, and it was kind of like, well, let's decompress and do some consulting work for a while, and just kind of right the ship for a little bit, and then I got back, onto a career trajectory, which has taken me to where I am today.
So, and so back to Vancouver Island, Kamloops for the, you're in Kamloops basically because that's where the
our head office is in Kamloops. There's 500 people in Kamloops, and then there's a secondary office in Vancouver, which has about 400 people. But my role is based in Kamloops.
So I think I might have asked you this, but no questions about gambling in the job interview at all?
Nope. What they wanted was somebody who could help them navigate the transition of the company to a social purpose model. And so when we talk about a social purpose business, we mean a company that really places a social purpose at its pinnacle for its reason for being, why it exists, so it replaces the mission. And generally speaking, a social purpose company is one that's trying to make the world better, and its growth is a positive force in society.
Okay. So I read that Forrester report that you commissioned. So here's a quote from it. The term social purpose company is defined as a company whose enduring reason is being to create a better world. These companies are an engine for good in that they create a better world. Their growth is a positive force in society. It's a lot to live up to, right? Yep. So, I've seen this, what's ESG?
Environmental, social, and governance.
So I've seen that a lot.
Mm-hmm.
It's a hot thing, and suddenly there's ESG gurus, there's courses you can take, and so I did. Google's my favorite thing to do
Right.
when I'm bored, and I just Googled ESG, and what pops up right away is, in all honesty, it's ESG oil, ESG mining. So, it's like, is it a marketing thing just to make people look good? Or
listen, there's some blowback that's happening. To quite frankly, it comes down to companies: are they authentic or inauthentic? And
Right.
there are companies who have bad practices who try to wrap themselves in a virtuous cloak.
yes,
ESG at its core, though, is something that is meaningful and substantial, and is an orientation that a company takes to acknowledge its impacts from an ESG perspective. But ESG is not what I'm talking about. When I talk about a social, we have an ESG framework. It rolls up to our social purpose. But being a social purpose company, and our social purpose is to generate win-wins. There's the gambling language.
Right.
Win-wins for the greater good.
Yes.
And so what we've been doing over the last 2 years since we adopted the social purpose is in every part of our business looking for how can we generate win-wins for the greater good as an employer, in our products, in the way that we market, in the way that we view our role in the world, the kinds of, even like our legal team, whatever. Like it's a total mind shift, and our employees are embracing it. They always knew that we were doing something good in the sense that we were contributing money to the province that was used for, as I said earlier, for healthcare, education, and so on. But now it's not just the end of pipe. It's all the and the money that comes out the other end. It's all the decisions that get us there, and can we make better decisions and make them more mindful?
Is it a set of standards or like best practices for organizations
to be a social purpose company?
Yeah.
Well, there's a number of things that you would do if you want to be a legitimate social purpose company. From how you engage with your stakeholders, how you engage with your employees, how you make decisions, and so on. But there isn't necessarily a standard per se that exists presently. That's actually kind of in development, and I'm involved in some of that work. But there isn't like a checklist that you say, if I do these 15 things, I'm a social purpose company.
I've worked for financial institutions, and I'm certainly there's a contact or two of mine that are now talking about ESG anyway.
Yep.
And so I worry that this sort of thing is potentially window dressing, and it says that in your report as well, right? So is a bank, really trying to make the world a better place, or are they trying to, all these companies, the oil and mining and banking, are they trying to make a lot of money for their shareholders? Because, if you're a president of a bank, and if you're not making enough money for your shareholders, you get fired, right? So that must be hard for you to push that through, isn't it?
Yeah, it's interesting because some of our employees, have said to me, well, is our shareholder, who's the province of British Columbia, is our shareholder going to be happy that we offer them less money being a social purpose company? And I'm like, I don't know where you got this idea from. It's not a zero-sum game.
Right.
I think if you look at, Me Too, Black Lives Matter, the underbelly that was revealed in terms of inequality through the pandemic, the climate crisis, there's myriad problems of in the world. If you're a company in this day and age and you don't take stock of those issues, then quite frankly, you're going to find yourself less profitable and more on the margins. And so being a social purpose company gives you license to really embrace some of those challenges and figure out how you can be a part of the solution. And in so doing, like we hired 20 people in our marketing team over the last 6 months because we had some growth and we had some turnover. And those employees came because we're a social purpose company. They are energized by what we're doing. Whether you're a millennial or a Gen Z or whatever, people want meaning in their life. Leadership skills have changed. There's an expectation that we can bring our whole selves to work, that we're going to talk about difficult subjects. And that's part of what it means to be a company. I think a good company today, and more companies are being confronted with some of these other issues that I just mentioned. And if they try and explain them away or poo-poo them, then quite frankly, consumers are going to vote with their wallets in many cases.
Right. Is the trend in that direction more and more progressive, or is there pushback just politically? across. I mean,
It depends on what country you're in.
I watch too much politics, or I did until I kind of just detoxed from it all. But
European
American
countries
stuff,
tend to be more on this model. Even the UK is quite a leader in the space around social purpose and community benefit corporations. So companies that build right into their charter of incorporation that they're going to be responsive to the community, that their sole purpose is not the Milton Friedman school of only the shareholder is supreme, that actually the way that you generate wealth for the company is by being more mindful of who your stakeholders are. We call that stakeholder capitalism these days as opposed to shareholder capitalism. So that's a trend. In the United States, it's much more polarized. I think, every aspect of life in America, it's a broken country, if you ask me.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
It's at war with itself. And in the U.S., you're seeing a lot of people, the governors of states who are bringing in laws that say, we don't want, if you're managing our money, we don't want any of this ESG bullshit presented to us. We want you just to maximize profits, for example. Yes. So it's much more polarized south of the border. In Canada, it's
not
still
sneaking in a little bit, even in the western provinces. I mean, I'm just
it depends on what to be honest, depends on what province you're in. I mean, I live on the left coast. We have an NDP government.
Right.
Their priorities are things like people first, sustainable development, and so on. So we're very much aligned with the government that we currently have in power. But even in Ontario, which is run with a conservative government, you're seeing a lot of companies that are much more mindful of what their impact in the community is, the social impact, the environmental impact that they're creating, and they need to wrap their mind around it if they want to. There's a war for talent on, and younger people in particular, they want this stuff, and they've seen their parents sort of sell their souls for the company man and get tossed aside when they're 55, and they're like, screw it. That's not what I'm interested in. I want a job with meaning. And that's where I think a lot of this work comes in.
That's a big trend in the research too. People want more meaning. They want more accountability. And we can talk about that a little bit. So if, that just made me think of something, but if the government changed in BC, is the Lottery Corporation relatively autonomous from whoever might be running the government?
Well, we get a letter every year called a mandate letter, and that tells us what the government's policies are, and they expect us to support them. If we go from a more left government to a right government, then we need to support whatever the government of the day, what it determines the priorities are going to be. But I think you can even see it irrespective of ideology. Most governments today are more focused on issues relating to environmental concerns or social concerns, housing prices, whatever the case may be. So I don't think it's going to change materially for the way that we handle ourselves. And we, quite frankly, as I said, have replaced our mission with the social purpose. And unless the government of the day says, get rid of that, we want you to just, put all that aside, well, we'll have to do that. But I don't think they will, because we're inspiring a lot of change, not only in our industry, but with other crown corporations and other companies across our industry and across the country.
So the money comes in, and then the money goes out, and you're maybe building capital projects, whatever it is. Do you have an opinion? Do you get to have an opinion on whatever the money is spent on? Or?
No, we don't. No. That now we generate about $1.5 billion every year. At least we will this year in profits.
Right.
Of that, about $140 million the government will give to community groups of various kinds: parent advisory committees, sports groups, community groups. Some money goes to what we call host local government. So if you have a casino in your community, you get some of that money. 7% plus of what we generate goes to Indigenous communities in British Columbia and so on. So a lot of that, we don't have a say in where that money goes, but it goes to good things. And then the healthcare system and the education system is where the rest goes.
So I want to talk to you about gambling for a second, because it is a controversial topic, and I'm no saint or anything, but I don't gamble that much, but I'm in a couple sports pools and so. So from the BCLC on the website, I guess. Gambling has an enduring appeal because of the suspense found in the magic moment between net and result. The bet is often lost, but an experience is always won.
Right.
but for a small percentage of players, the magic moment can take a dark turn. BCLC exists to ensure gambling in British Columbia is safe, legal, and harm-free. So my observation is, with pro sports, what used to be illegal is now legal across North America.
Single event betting, yep.
And it's kind of taking over because legal gambling companies now are sponsoring everything as well. Like I'm talking about football and baseball. So it's everywhere. And what I worry about is that sometimes you used to just watch sports for the joy of
the game,
the athletic accomplishment. But now it's getting. I fear that now you'll only watch it because you got to wager on it. Like even I feel that myself, even in football pools and stuff. If I'm not somehow involved in a game, I won't watch it. Where when I was a teenager, I would watch it just to see who, this exciting final match or whatever it was. I don't know. How do you sort of rationalize?
I'm going to respond to that in a couple of ways. One is still the vast majority of sports fans don't bet. They don't want to bet, or they don't feel comfortable betting. They don't understand how odds are created and so on. So there's still a huge pool of people that just watch the game because they want to watch the game. For those who want to make it more interesting and bet, that option exists. Now, you're also putting a frame of reference on this that is Ontario based.
Right.
So Ontario has changed its rules, and all the other Canadian provinces have not. So let me just quickly explain. Single event betting is legal across Canada. But in Ontario, the government has licensed up to 70 companies to offer various gambling products, and many of them are focused in the sports field. So because, how many Torontonians does it take to screw in a light bulb? Just one to stand there while the world revolves around them. Sorry, Torontonians. I used to live in Toronto. But
you're allowed to say that.
But, the reality is that people in Ontario and Canada, for that matter, they see what's happening in Ontario. The media is here. It spills over into other provinces. And so we think that everybody is like FanDuel and, DraftKings and all these other.
Well, in the States too, right? All that stuff's in the
States,
right?
And all that stuff. But if you live in most provinces in Canada, you can only bet with the legal option, which is the state-sanctioned one, in our case, BCLC. Right. So, we have sewn up partnerships with all of the key sports teams in British Columbia, but we do place a really strong focus on what we call player health. Some people call it responsible gambling. Our vision is to have the healthiest players in the world. We have a program that we call Game Sense, and we actually license it to 7 jurisdictions in Canada and many in the United States, including MGM hotels and resorts, because we have a world-leading program, and that is really designed to help ensure that people understand how the games work, that people have the right skills and knowledge to debunk certain myths. There's no such thing as, this machine is hot, or if I rubbed my, rabbit foot that I'm going to suddenly, win this game. That's not the case. So we educate people a lot about that, and we put in place different things like on our online system called Play Now. You can have a dashboard when you sign in. How much money did you spend? You can set a limit. You can set a time limit. So we've created a bunch of tools, AI tools, and so on to help people manage, and ensure that they're using gambling as a form of entertainment. So I can spend $200 on a night and I can go see Elton John in a concert, or I can spend $200 with my friends and go to a casino and have a night of entertainment.
Yeah.
It's the same thing, right? And if we ban it, and that's where my Dutch pragmatism comes in. You ban alcohol in prohibition, what do? You push it underground. You ban abortion, what do? You push it underground. What do you. So
right. There's always gambling. It's just
gambling has existed
in back alleys,
for centuries, if not millennia. Actually, the Great Wall of China was in part financed by lottery, and the modern day lottery goes back to Bruges, Belgium, in the 1450s. That's where we get the word lottery from. It comes from the Flemish word lotingen, and that was used to raise money voluntarily for city coffers to be used on public works. Because they knew that people wouldn't tolerate any more taxes. So, it is a form of, definitely there is a profit margin.
It's a form of taxation, is it not? Or
well, no, it's, if you want to call it voluntary taxation in a sense, but it's not like anybody's holding, if you'll holding a gun to your head to do it,
Right.
and we want to deliver you a great entertainment experience, like you said, whether you win or not.
Right.
And for a lot of people, I sat in a cab not long ago in Vancouver, and the guy, we had a conversation, and he said, "Oh, you work for the Lottery Corporation?" He goes, "You know what? I love to buy scratch and win lottery tickets, and even if I don't win, I feel good knowing that the money goes to good causes in the province."
Right. Yeah, I mean that if I were to, give I actually love Las Vegas. I've been there several times. I don't gamble there though, and
It's a different model too in Vegas, right? It's private companies that are there.
Well, I go to Las
maximize
Vegas for the
profits.
conventions. It's
Sure.
kind of the modern. I read Playboy for the articles, kind of thing. I go there for that's my. I worked on that. I worked on that. So
That was a great line. Okay.
but I like the idea if you go to a casino or engage in gambling at all, it's like in entertainment. So give yourself a budget.
Yeah.
So whatever it is, let's say it's $100. I'm going to casino.
When the $100
In my
is gone,
opinion, the house always wins. So
it always wins.
Or most of the time. So that $100, you're spending it. You could be on a show, as you say, or you're spending it, and there'll be some highs and lows along the way on your way to zero, right?
Yeah.
Because the longer you gamble, the more likely it is that you lose. It is pretty interesting sometimes when I've gone to Vegas, but I've also worked there. And sometimes you're getting up at 7 or 8 in the morning. Some people have been up all night. That said, it's an acquired taste, but actually I like Las Vegas. It's an odd thing.
But Vegas has transformed as well over the years, right? You go there because you want to see a Cirque du Soleil show or the Celine show or Adele or whoever is performing, and then there's great other attractions and amusement parks and so on. So Vegas did go through a period of where it needed to reinvent itself, which it has done. But it's a very different model. It's a destination place, right? In British Columbia, we distribute the casinos in communities across the province. It's not that sort of come one, come all to one part of the province to gamble. And we are not motivated to generate profits just for the sake of our shareholders. We are told, the government has written into our mandate that we have to take a very careful approach to player health and anti-money laundering and a range of things, which we do, in order to ensure that it is a form of entertainment and not something that is negative. Now, are there people who struggle with addiction around gambling? 100%.
Right.
They would anyway, they would probably go underground. They wouldn't have the supports we have in every casino, what's called a game sense advisor. We have them online as well. We're one of the first jurisdictions globally to ever do that. So we offer supports. We use non-stigmatizing language, right? We try and support people if they feel that, they can also voluntarily self-exclude and say, please don't let me into your property anymore, and we honor that. And if they decide at a point in time they want to come back, we have a program that they have to follow in order to come back and demonstrate really that they're ready. But there's also that need to find a balance between free will and a nanny state, right? Like if somebody says, I want to gamble and I'm ready to gamble, well, we can't stop people from doing that. It's their choice. And it is a form of entertainment. So there's absolutely a razor's edge, and that's one of the things that's most appealing to me and most interesting to the work is that there is that tension constantly between, the form of entertainment and that side where it can tip the dark side. Yeah, the side that can tip some people in to a place that's not in their interest or the interest of their family.
Do you like the job?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Why?
Yeah.
Because it's self-explanatory, I suppose.
Well, no, I mean, because the work that we were doing as a social purpose company is being infused in every part of the business, right? So first of all, I'm getting to know every aspect of the company, and we're a $3 billion company, but I'm also, we're incorporating the social purpose into the employee experience. We're incorporating into our brand. We're filtering our products through it. We are meaningfully engaging in Indigenous reconciliation. as a result of being a social purpose company. Is giving us more license to do a better job and think differently as a company. So for me, it's really exciting. And part of my role is also to inspire other businesses. So I'm working with our media buyers to media buying service. They buy $1 billion every year in Canada, and I'm giving them advice. I'm advising our advertising agencies, and I'm trying to help create change in the industry that goes far beyond just ourselves. And from that perspective, it's really satisfying. It's also important, I think, that people also are aware of their own impact and not just point a finger at one or two industries and blame them for everything. Like, we all are part of this journey, and all part of the impacts and the challenges that the globe is facing. And we're trying to be more conscious as a company. And I think more companies should be doing what we're doing. And we're open to the input and the feedback, both from our employees as well as our stakeholders. And I think something that's really critical to us as a company is that stakeholder engagement. So we're in the midst of totally refreshing and updating our stakeholder engagement framework, setting goals, making with each stakeholder group, making sure that we listen to them, that we take on board their worldview, and try and find the sweet spot between all those different opinions. And I think we emerge as a better company. I think society is better for it, and I think we can inspire other businesses as well in the act of doing that work. But I don't think anybody has perfection, and if perfection is your goal, you're always going to be disappointed, right? But you have to be clear about what your goals are. And it reminds me of a statement that was made of a Via Rail conductor and somebody said, well, why do you bother to publish a timetable since your trains are always late? And he said, well, how else would we know how far behind schedule we are, right? And so it's that kind of thing. Like, it's important to have goals and to know where you want to go. And sure, we're not going to be perfect, and we're going to learn from it. But the one thing that we're doing, and that I've sort of inculcated with all of our team, is we have to talk about what we're learning, what we did right and what we did wrong, and it's all open source. So you referenced this paper that we commissioned, and that's how does marketing look different in a social purpose company? And we want to give all of this away. We did a climate risk assessment. We're working with the what we call service providers. They operate the casinos with us in a joint venture. We're sharing that information with them. We're sharing it with our colleagues in other Crown corporations. We've brought 30-something Crown corporations in British Columbia together in the month of November around diversity and inclusion, and what does that mean, and how can Crown corporations do better, and so on. And so we are giving all of this away. We're not husbanding it. We want to inspire other organizations to do better too. And will we make missteps along the way? 100%. But so will you in your personal life, and so will other people in their personal life or their business life. And if all we do is call each other out for our failures, we're never going to make progress.
Yeah. No, you're doing good work. I want to thank you for coming. You have a 5-year plan. I have a 5-week plan. So you've got me beat there. So, but thanks for coming by, Peter.
Thanks for asking some tough questions.
Yeah, I skipped a few, so I'll mail the rest to you.
Okay.
So, but thanks for coming. I do appreciate the long voyage out here.
It was my pleasure, Jim, and hopefully, your viewers will take something away from today's conversation.